I just wanted to explain myself. I'll start with this. I should have probably addressed this issue sooner, and I apologize for any misunderstanding regarding it. But and if some have noticed, I do not pledge, or we pledge to the flag. If you don't know me, my name is Jesse Dickinson. I follow God's word. I live up in Pegs, where I'm self-employed. I do like welding, fabrication, and repairs. Can everybody hear me? I became self-employed when we first moved here, because I just decided I wanted to work for myself. Just to tell you a little bit about myself and my family. My grandfather fought the Japanese on the destroyer USS Softly in the Pacific, and my dad was a Marine in Vietnam. When I was young, I considered going into the service. God directed me elsewhere. My family always believed in America as the land of the free, home of the brave. Our country seems to be getting worse every second. The freedom and comforts we experience in this country are pretty unique in the history of man. I'm very blessed to live here, and I understand all of that. And the freedoms we have in this country are still enormously greater than probably most of the other countries in the world. And I always took that, that idea of this country and kind of considered myself a patriot, somebody who believed in the country and the cause and what this country was founded on. I even supported our empire spreading peace and democracy, or at least the claim to spread peace and democracy throughout the world. I'd like you to ask yourself, what is a patriot? Popular opinion these days tells us a patriot is someone who follows lockstep in supporting and or fighting for our country, regardless of our country's right or wrong. Which I'm sure you're all aware there's quite a bit wrong with this country, even though there is still quite a bit right. But based on that definition, I couldn't be a patriot, because I can't blindly support our country. I think the men who founded this country are called patriots for quite the opposite. Before these United States were formed, they stood up to their government. They declared Britain had no right to oppress the people simply because they had the ability or power to do so. They put up with far less injustice than we have. If you look into the Stamp Act and some of the things that they drew the line at, it was, we put up we're putting up with a lot more. I think generally people today regard our founders as patriots because of all that resistance. Not allegiance to government, but defiance of it. I think the greater cause is allegiance to God and love for your fellow man. These two motivating factors were what got me politically involved about 4 years ago. I started to look into things. I started to learn more about politics in our country and the Constitution and what makes it work and work so well for so long. But I started to learn about a lot of things I never heard before. Previously held positions began to be challenged. It was kind of a whirlwind, eye-opening experience for me, and I began to see a lot of fallacies in my own beliefs, and I began to question things more and more. When I began attending our GOP meetings, I saluted the flag the first 1 or 2 times, just like I had, dozens of other times before. It occurred to me that I hadn't done it since I was homeschooled. My parents homeschooled me from 4th grade all the way through high school, and we said the pledge every day. Like I said, we were always, believed in the American way. But when I began saying it again, I questioned it, along with all this other stuff that I've been thinking about and questioning in my mind and all this learning I've done. I had to ask, where did the pledge come from? When did it start? What person wrote it? I had a suspicion that it didn't go back to the founding of our country, so I decided to do a little research. The fact of the matter is that our founders had nothing to do with it. The The pledge was written by a man named Francis Bellamy in 1892. He believed in Christian socialism. He was a Christian socialist. And that philosophy views capitalism as a mortal sin, believing that the government should guarantee equality, as if somehow the government can even do that. He was a pastor who preached in sermons that the middle class in the United States could create a planned economy with political, social, and economic equality for everyone. Writing this pledge was one way to give his views a national audience. He wanted the pledge to originally include equality as well, but that got taken out because of the issue of racism in the South and stuff. He didn't think that would fly nationwide. It wasn't until 1954, 23 years after Bellamy died, that Congress changed the wordings to include under God. Bellamy advocated for subservience to national government rather than local. One of the ways he promoted this was to convince the National Education Associations Committee during a national meeting of school superintendents to implement the pledge nationwide. He succeeded in this pursuit while coupling this pledge campaign with selling flags to all the schools he instructed with his new Pledge of Allegiance. The pledge was to be recited every day and originally read as follows: I pledge allegiance to the flag and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In dissecting the words of the pledge, I think it's important to note his choice of the word republic, which by definition refers to the government. It's a form of government. The government of a particular country, not the country itself, which in turn is defined as a group of people or a given territory. I know I never viewed myself as pledging my allegiance to the government. I can only imagine some or maybe all of you feel the same way. But this is what the pledge is actually saying, and our words do matter. Inherent in the language is another reason to include one nation. Socialists don't like republics, which is what this country was set up to be. Our states were set up to be sovereign, with the federal government existing by the will of the states, for the service of the states. America was not designed to be one nation in terms of a typical collectivist mind. This subtle attack on the very framework of this country and the form of government can also be seen in the term indivisible, again indicating Mr. Bellamy's version of collectivism. I think it's ironic that the salute was very similar to the salute of the Führer of Nazi Germany, although it preceded it by many years, with the hand first in a military-style salute, and at the words "our flag" was to be outstretched palm up towards the flags. For obvious reasons, this became pretty unpopular in the 1940s, so the change was to put your hand over your heart. As I learned about this history and the collectivist, socialist mentality behind it, I thought to myself, wow, this is kind of an American version of the Führer salute. One thing that I think separates America apart from so many other countries and so many other beliefs is the idea of the individual, and that everybody has different beliefs, desires, ideals, opinions. So I can't help but ask, why is it necessary to ask every individual to blindly recite the state mantra, one conceived by a self-proclaimed socialist, when the words in the pledge might violate my or your or anybody else's conscience? There always seems to be a push towards statism because people get in power and they want as much control as they can over our lives, all the while kind of like patriotic. Support your country when it does right. I believe in that. But if you feel like I do, there's not much our government does these days that I can support with a clear conscience. I support your right to pledge to anything you want. And I mean no disrespect to those who have fought and died for our country and to secure the blessings of liberty for us. But I cannot pledge my allegiance to a government that has little respect for life, liberty, and property. If anybody has a question for me, that's it.
Yeah, you're not pledging your allegiance to the government, you're pledging your allegiance to the flag in this country.
I understand that argument, but that's why I explained the word says, I pledge allegiance to the flag and to the republic for which it stands. Republic is not a country. Republic is a form of government.
You're saluting to the flag, you're pledging your allegiance to the flag in the country.
and the government.
No, it has nothing to do with the government.
Well, what does it mean by
Because
republic?
it was what the flag represents, freedom and liberty. That's what you're pledging your allegiance to, freedom and liberty.
But it doesn't say I'm pledging for this. I mean, the words, I understand, that's the way I felt for years. When I started reading it and getting more critical with it, I realized the words don't actually say that.
I'm getting your message that you're saying two different things.
Well,
You don't like what the government's doing, I don't either.
Mhm.
Therefore, that's the reason you don't salute the flag. But the flag's not the government.
The republic is the government.
Yeah, but what you're disagreeing with is the government. You're not disagreeing with the flag or.
Well, and I don't disagree with the words liberty and justice for all. That's a good thing to fight for, liberty and justice for all.
I'm just saying.
But there's certain things in the pledge that are outright false, you know.
Saying in your essay there that you kind of contradicted yourself to what I understand.
Yeah, and I understand how you can take it that way, but I'm looking at the actual word republic, and that is not a country, it's a form of government.
That is a form of government.
And in order for me to pledge my allegiance to a government, a form of government, I have to believe in that is doing right.
See, there you go again. You're talking about the government. The flag and allegiance is different. It's not the government.
And like I said, I understand that most people, you know, they feel like they're actually pledging to the country. And that's what they're doing in their heart and mind.
That's what you're doing. You're pledging your allegiance to your country.
Yeah.
The flag represents our country. Each one
It
of
doesn't
those
represent
stars
our
is a
government.
state. And we're supporting our country. That's a symbol.
Yeah.
And for young people to grow up and know that's a symbol of America.
No, I understand all that. That's not, the actual words of the pledge don't support I'm pledging allegiance to my country. They support I'm pledging allegiance to the republic. The actual words, I'm just saying the actual words, and I believe before God I'm held accountable. It says, by words you'll be justified, by your words you'll be condemned. So I know that the words I use are important. And if I'm going to pledge allegiance to a republic, I'm going to have to believe in that republic. The actual government. Right now, our government is gone crazy. They're insane up there. They know no bounds of their evil. You know, look how much innocent blood is on this country just by abortion alone. You know, I can't pledge allegiance to those ideals, those kind of things. And yes, I would, you know, like I said, my grandfather and my dad both fought, you know, in campaigns, in military campaigns in this country. And I consider doing the same because of my same beliefs. But that's not what the pledge is really about. The pledge is about, and the roots of the pledge too, if you keep going back to the roots of the pledge, it was this guy, the socialist Francis Bellamy, and he wrote it to do exactly what he succeeded in doing, getting people to follow the national government over the individual state governments.
This is to unite the American people. That's a symbol for us. From the time we're small children till we die. That means a lot to us. We protect that.
Yeah, I understand.
And we, as people, need boundaries. We can't just run askew and have our ways. And that's probably one of our biggest problems. We've got too many rights. And we need to kind of
Yeah, I can't agree with that.
Well, let me ask this question. Since you don't believe in pledging your allegiance to your flag or this country, who do you pledge your allegiance to?
God.
No, what country?
Oh, I don't pledge allegiance to any country.
Our country's only as good as the people in it.
Yep.
I just, you know, I do pledge the flag. And to me, I guess I do I don't really care what the words say or mean, where they came from. I do it. I guess I did when I pledge in what I would like it to be, the ideal of what I would like it to be. You know. At the same time, though, a lot of times as I'm pledging like a football game, I get a little pissed at the time, just think about, you know, our country, what's going on right now. And I really think, you know, the pledge to the flag is not the real issue. It's just kind of like the flashpoint. You know, whether we pledge the flag or not that's not the real issue. The real issues are the economic and other issues that are a lot larger, a lot more complex and difficult to understand. And anyway, I just think that we need to look at the, we're in a division right now.
Well, and I,
Republican Party, and I think that, the flag is not really the big issue. The issues, the military and the economics, those issues. And that's what we need to try to understand where we're coming from. The key is not, like the flag or not, the key is what's going on in this country and what do you feel about it and why?
yeah, and
that's the key.
And I agree with you, and that's why I started this out with an apology, because I didn't see, for some it is an issue. It is a big issue.
Well, I mean, I understand that.
That I don't pledge.
Yeah,
I didn't see it that way. When I first started coming here, I thought, well, I can just bow out because it's a personal thing. It's a conscience thing for me. I can't do it with a clear conscience before God. And so I thought I could just bow out, but a lot of people really bothered by it. And so I thought I would explain myself here. Like I said, I should have addressed it sooner. But you had something?
Yeah, I have something to say. I'm a two-time veteran, 2 tours in Iraq. I pledge allegiance to the flag. That's my property. But the way I feel about it is, the reason I served those 2 tours was for everybody in this room, so you can believe how you want to believe and not be disrespected for it or looked down upon for it. That's what this country is about, is freedom and liberty. As an American citizen, you should have the freedom and liberty to choose what you want and to believe in what you want to believe in. That's all I have to say.
Back in the 70s, I was teaching at Sequoia High School. And in the 70s, we had a lot of militant groups among some of the tribes, Kiowas in particular, at Sequoia. And some of the students, that's the same time sit-ins were going on in Washington, D.C., and they were tearing up the BIA building and holding it hostage in Alcatraz Island, where Wilma Mankiller was. But anyway, at Sequoia High School, we had some students take down the American flag and burn it. And I tell you what, that just like killed me. I mean, I still cry now when I think about it. But we had a very wise superintendent, Ed Moore, Choctaw. His grandson is now in charge of our Chamber of Commerce. Anyway, Ed Moore was the state commander of the reserves, and I think it was Army. And he had fought in the Second World War. And he tried to calm me down. He said, Judy, I fought for that flag and I love it. But I fought for the right, for them to have the right of what they did, even though I don't agree with it.
That's the crux of the issue, really, because if we truly believe in the principles this country was founded on, I will defend your right to say something that I hate. I will defend your right to serve your God however you want, even though I may think you're completely wrong. I will defend your right, because without those rights, we can't be guaranteed that the way we choose to serve God or the things we choose to do, we have any freedom to. When you hand over that authority to decide what is right and wrong, and what can be said or not, or what God you can serve, you're taking it out of the individual's choice. And if you give it to the state, you can see over and over and over again throughout history, governments that have used that to the great destruction of people. And that's the idea that, I think a true patriot will defend somebody's right to burn the American flag, as odd as that sounds. And that's just the way I see it.
To me, the flag is just a symbol. It's just a symbol that means different things. Everybody looks at it a different way. It's a symbol in a different way, everyone. But I think, basically, what are the principles behind symbolism? And that's what's the issue. And that's what we need to address.
And that's what we agree on.
That's what we need to address on.
Yeah, I agree.
What our principles are.
Is that awkward pause?
Well, thank you for the questions.